The first thing you need to know about my wife Marta is that she's never met a mirror she didn't love. The second thing is that she married me for my money, and I'm probably the only person in our affluent Chicago suburb who finds that hilarious. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Alex Holden, 44 finance director at Brennan & Associates advertising agency, and I've got what most people would call a perfect life. 6-figure salary, beautiful wife, sprawling house in Winnetka, and enough sarcasm to fill Lake Michigan. The problem with perfect lives is they're usually too good to be true. Alex, honey, could you grab my purse from the kitchen? Marta called from our master bedroom, her voice carrying that particular tone that meant she was running late for another creative meeting with her team. I found her designer handbag on the granite counter, and that's when I saw it. A hotel receipt that had fallen out, crumpled but readable. The Ritz-Carlton presidential suite charged to a credit card I didn't recognize. The name on the receipt read J. Turnbull plus M. Holden, in Jake Turnbull, Marta's junior creative director. The cocky 38-year-old with perfectly styled hair and a smile that screamed trust fund baby, even though I knew for a fact he was drowning in student loans. Find it? Marta appeared in the doorway, looking stunning as always in her tailored business suit. I held up the receipt. Yeah, I found something interesting. Her face went pale for exactly 2 seconds before the mask slipped back into place. Oh, that. It's from the Morrison Industries presentation. Jake booked the room for the client meeting. Funny, because Morrison Industries is based in Milwaukee, not downtown Chicago. And since when do client meetings require presidential suites? Marta snatched the receipt from my hand. You're being paranoid, Alex. It's not attractive. Neither is lying to your husband, but here we are. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I'm late for work. We'll talk about this later. But we both knew we wouldn't. That's the thing about marriages built on mutual benefit rather than love. Eventually, someone decides they're not getting enough benefit. I drove to work in my sensible BMW, my mind racing. 20 years of marriage, and I'd always known Marta was ambitious, social climbing, and more interested in my bank account than my personality. But I'd been fine with that arrangement. She got financial security and social status. I got a beautiful wife who made me look successful at company parties. The affair, though, that wasn't part of our deal. Brennan & Associates occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in downtown Chicago. I'd been there 12 years, working my way up from junior accountant to finance director, and I knew where every penny went, including the company credit cards. Morning, Alex, called Raj Patel, our IT manager and my closest friend at the office. You look like someone stole your lunch money. More like someone's been spending money that isn't theirs? I settled into my office chair and pulled up the company expense reports. Tell me, what do you know about Jake Turnbull's recent business trips? Raj raised an eyebrow. The Golden Boy? Not much, but I can tell you his corporate card has been getting a workout. Why? Just curious about our creative team's dedication to client service. It took me exactly 37 minutes to find what I was looking for. Jake had been charging personal expenses to his corporate card for months. Dinners, hotels, even jewelry from Tiffany & Co. All of it technically against company policy, all of it easily traceable, but the real smoking gun came from an unexpected source. Alex? My assistant knocked on my office door. Your wife called. She said to tell you she's working late again tonight on the Henderson campaign. I pulled up our client list. We didn't have a Henderson campaign. That's when I decided to do something that would have horrified the old, trusting version of myself. I was going to investigate my own wife. The first stop was Marta's laptop at home. She'd always been careless with passwords, using variations of our anniversary date for everything. It took me 3 tries to get into her personal email. What I found there made my stomach drop and my anger rise in equal measure. Email after email between Marta and her friend Tanya discussing the situation with Jake. Screenshots of text messages where Marta called me financially useful but emotionally destroyed. Plans for weekend getaways that I'd been told were girls' trips. But the worst part was the group chat Marta had with her inner circle, Tanya, Liz, and 2 other women from her yoga class. The chat was titled Desperate Housewives of Winnetka, and it was full of gossip about affairs, divorces, and strategies for trading up to better husbands. Marta's latest message, sent just that morning, Jake wants me to leave, Alex, but I'm not stupid. I need to make sure I get half of everything first. My lawyer says Illinois is a no-fault state, so the affair doesn't matter for alimony. Just need to be patient a little longer. I screenshot everything. Then I kept digging. Jake's social media was a goldmine of stupidity. Instagram stories showing off expensive dinners, luxury hotel rooms, and jewelry that I now realized I'd been indirectly paying for through his expense account fraud. But the real jackpot was a video he'd posted and then quickly deleted, a recording of him bragging to his friend Seth about his affair with a married woman whose husband is too boring to notice. Raj had taught me a few tricks about recovering deleted social media content. Within an hour, I had the video saved to 3 different devices. By the time Marta came home that night, I had enough evidence to destroy both her and Jake's lives. The question was, what was I going to do with it? "How was your day, honey?" she asked, kissing my cheek with lips that had probably been on another man. "Educational," I replied. "Very educational." The next morning, I sat in my office staring at my computer screen, cursor hovering over the send button of an email that would change everything. The recipients list included Dave Millant, our CEO, Helen Rodriguez, HR director, and about 15 other key people at the agency. The subject line read, "Expense account irregularities, Jake Turnbull." Attached were screenshots of Jake's fraudulent charges, the recovered video of him bragging about the affair, and a detailed breakdown of every policy violation I'd found. I'd been careful to keep it professional, focusing on the business implications rather than the personal betrayal. I clicked send. My phone buzzed immediately. Raj. "Dude, did you just nuke Jake Turnbull from orbit?" "I have no idea what you're talking about," I replied, but I was smiling for the first time in weeks. Within an hour, Jake was called into Dave's office. I watched through my office window as he walked down the hallway, confident and oblivious. He came back 20 minutes later looking like he'd been hit by a truck. But I wasn't done, not even close. My next email went to a different group, Marta's parents, her sister, and her entire social circle. The subject line was simple. "You should know." The message was even simpler. "I thought you should see what Marta and Jake have been up to. I'm sure you'll find it as interesting as I did." I attached the group chat screenshots, the hotel receipts, and Jake's bragging video. Then I sat back and waited for the fireworks. They didn't take long. My phone started ringing at 11:30 a.m. Marta's mother, Dolores, her voice shaking with rage. "Alexander, what is the meaning of these horrible messages you've sent? This can't be true about Marta." "I'm afraid it is, Dolores. I found the evidence yesterday. I thought her family should know what kind of person they've been supporting all these years." "You're lying! Marta would never—" "Check her credit card statements. Check her phone records. Check anything you want. I've got documentation for everything." The line went quiet for a long moment. "Oh, Alexander, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." Neither did I, until yesterday. By noon, Marta was calling me frantically. "Alex, what the hell did you do? My mother is hysterical. Jake got suspended, and Tanya won't even return my calls." "I told the truth. Isn't that what you're always saying I should do more of?" "You had no right to air our private business." "Our private business? Marta, you've been planning to divorce me and take half my assets while screwing another man on company time. That stopped being private the moment you involved other people." "I'm coming home. We need to talk." "Actually, we don't. I'm filing for divorce this afternoon. My lawyer will be in touch." I hung up and immediately called my attorney, Robert Chen, who'd handled my business contracts for years. "Alex, good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" "I need a divorce lawyer, the best one you know." "That would be Sarah Mitchell. She's ruthless, expensive, and very good at protecting assets. Want me to set up a meeting?" "Today, if possible." Sarah Mitchell's office was in a gleaming downtown tower, all glass and steel and intimidation. She was a sharp-faced woman in her 50s with silver hair and eyes like a hawk. "Mr. Holden, Robert filled me in on the basics. Your wife is having an affair and planning to divorce you for financial gain?" "That's right, and I have documentation of everything." I showed her the evidence I'd gathered. Her expression didn't change, but I could see the wheels turning. "This is very good work. The affair itself won't affect alimony in Illinois, but the fraud, the deception, and the planning to conceal assets might. Plus, if she's been using marital funds to support this relationship, we can argue for reimbursement." "What about the house? Did you own it before the marriage?" "No, but I put down the entire down payment from my inheritance. Her name is on the deed, but I have documentation showing the source of funds. Even better, we can argue for a larger share based on your contributions. What about retirement accounts, investments?" "All in my name, built from my income. She's never worked consistently until the last few years." Sarah smiled for the first time. "Mr. Holden, I think we can make this very unpleasant for your wife. Are you prepared for this to get ugly?" "It's already ugly. I just want to make sure I'm not the only one suffering." When I got home that evening, Marta was waiting in the living room with a bottle of wine and her most seductive dress. "Alex, honey, I think we got our wires crossed today. Why don't we sit down and talk about this like adults? Adults don't have affairs and plan secret divorces." It wasn't like that. Jake means nothing to me. It was just a mistake, a moment of weakness. Months of mistakes, years of planning. I saw the group chat, Marta. I saw your strategy sessions about how to trade up from your boring husband. Her mask finally slipped completely. Fine. Yes, I was having an affair. Yes, I was planning to leave you. But can you blame me? When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you made me feel like a woman instead of a trophy wife? When was the last time you acted like a wife instead of a gold digger? She threw her wine glass at the wall. I gave you the best years of my life. You gave me 20 years of pretending to love me while spending my money and planning your exit strategy. There's a difference. You can't divorce me. I'll take half of everything. The house, your retirement, your savings. I'll make sure you have nothing left. I pulled out a folder of documents. Actually, I don't think you will. See, adultery might not affect alimony, but fraud does. And your boyfriend has been committing expense account fraud for months, using company money to fund your affair, money that ultimately comes from profits I helped generate. You can't prove that. I already did. Jake got suspended today. Tomorrow he'll probably be fired and possibly prosecuted. And since you were the beneficiary of his fraud, the jewelry, the hotel rooms, the dinners, you're an accessory. For the first time since I'd known her, Marta looked genuinely scared. What do you want? I want you out of my house by tomorrow. I want you to sign a separation agreement that gives me the house and protects my assets. And I want you to stay away from me while the lawyers figure out how little you're actually entitled to. And if I don't? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Then I send everything I found to your employer, your professional contacts, and every gossip blog in Chicago. Your affair will be public knowledge, and your reputation will be destroyed. She stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed her purse and headed for the door. This isn't over, Alex. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. After she left, I poured myself a scotch and sat in my living room, looking at the wine stain on the wall. 20 years of marriage ended in a single conversation, but I wasn't done with my revenge. Not by a long shot. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a coffee shop across from the Brennan and Associates building, watching Jake Turnbull carry a cardboard box to his car. His termination had been swift and brutal. Dave Millant had zero tolerance for expense account fraud, especially when it made the company look bad. My phone buzzed with a text from Raj. Golden Boy is officially gone. Dave's telling everyone he was stealing from the company to fund an affair. Marta's not looking too good either. That was an understatement. Marta's professional reputation was in free fall. Word had spread quickly through Chicago's tight-knit advertising community, and suddenly the woman who'd been a rising star was persona non grata. 3 major clients had specifically requested that she be removed from their accounts. But I wasn't satisfied with just watching their careers implode. I wanted them to understand what it felt like to have their lives turned upside down by someone they'd underestimated. Sarah Mitchell had been busy. The separation agreement was a work of art, legally speaking. Since I could prove that most of our marital assets came from my income and inheritance, and since Marta had been planning to defraud me, the division was heavily in my favor. She gets 20% of the marital assets, Sarah explained during our meeting. The house stays with you, since you provided the down payment and can prove the source. Her lawyer is fighting it, but the evidence you provided makes their position very weak. What about alimony? Minimal. 3 years, and only because of the length of the marriage. The fraud evidence limits her claim significantly. I was starting to feel like myself again for the first time in months, but the real satisfaction came from an unexpected source. Dolores called me on a Thursday evening, her voice tired and disappointed. Alexander, I owe you an apology. I've been going through Marta's financial records. She'd been using credit cards I co-signed for, running up debt for her affair. $23,000, charged to cards in my name. I'm sorry, Dolores. I know this is hard for you. She's my daughter, and I love her, but I can't support this behavior. I've cut off her credit cards and told her she can't stay here anymore. She made her choice. That was when I realized Marta was truly alone. Her parents had disowned her, her friends had abandoned her, and her career was in ruins. Jake was in the same boat, fired, broke, and facing potential criminal charges for the expense account fraud. But I still had one more card to play. The Winnetka Community Center hosted a charity gala every spring, a black tie event where the suburb's elite gathered to see and be seen while writing tax-deductible checks. Marta and I had attended for years, and this year I had no intention of breaking tradition. I bought a table for 8 and invited Raj, Sarah, my business partners, and a few other friends. Marta would be there too. She'd already bought her ticket before our separation, and her pride wouldn't let her skip the event. The gala was exactly what I'd expected. Overpriced wine, rubber chicken, and enough fake smiles to power the entire North Shore. Marta arrived fashionably late, wearing a dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. She looked beautiful and desperate, working the room like her life depended on it, which in a way it did. I waited until the auction portion of the evening, when everyone was relaxed and slightly drunk. Then I stood up and asked for the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to make a special announcement tonight." The room quieted down, curious. Marta was sitting 3 tables away, her face suddenly pale. As many of you know, my wife Marta and I are going through a divorce. It's been a difficult time, but I've learned some valuable lessons about trust, loyalty, and the importance of reading the fine print. A few nervous chuckles from the audience. For instance, I learned that when your spouse says they're working late, you should probably verify that with their employer, and when they say they need space to find themselves, you should check whether they're finding themselves in hotel rooms with their coworkers. The room was silent now. Marta was frozen in her chair, staring at me with a mixture of horror and rage. I also learned that expense account fraud is a serious crime, especially when it's used to fund extramarital affairs. But the most important thing I learned is that prenuptial agreements are worth their weight in gold. I raised my wine glass. So here's to new beginnings, honest relationships, and the importance of marrying for love instead of money. Cheers. The room erupted in whispers and shocked gasps. Marta stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair, and fled toward the exit. Several people pulled out their phones, undoubtedly texting the gossip to friends who hadn't been there to witness it firsthand. Raj appeared at my elbow, grinning. "Dude, that was brutal. Remind me never to cross you." She had it coming. But I wasn't done yet. The next morning, I called in a favor from an old college friend who worked at the Chicago Tribune's lifestyle section. "Jennifer, I have a story that might interest your readers. It's about infidelity, fraud, and the hidden costs of social climbing in suburban Chicago. Tell me more." The article ran the following Sunday with the headline, "When Trophy Wives Go Bad, a Winnetka Divorce Story." Jennifer had been careful to change names and identifying details, but anyone who knew us would recognize the story immediately. It painted a picture of entitled suburban wives who married for money, cheated for excitement, and destroyed their families for selfish gain. The article included quotes from divorce lawyers about the rising trend of strategic marriages and the legal consequences of marital fraud. Marta called me that afternoon, screaming, "You bastard! Everyone knows it's about me. My career is over." "Your career was over the moment you decided to sleep with Jake Turnbull. I just made sure everyone understood why." "I'll sue you for defamation." "Good luck with that. Everything in the article is true and well documented. Besides, your name isn't mentioned anywhere." "You've destroyed my life." "No, Marta. You destroyed your own life. I just made sure you couldn't take mine down with you." She hung up, and I poured myself a celebratory scotch. But the best was yet to come. 2 months after the gala incident, I was feeling pretty good about how things were going. The divorce was proceeding smoothly, Marta was living in a studio apartment in a less fashionable part of town, and Jake had been reduced to freelance work that barely paid his bills. But then Raj brought me some disturbing news. "Alex, I think you should know. Jake's been asking questions about you around the office building. Security mentioned he's been hanging around the parking garage, and someone saw him following you to lunch yesterday." That was concerning. Jake had always struck me as the type who blamed everyone else for his problems, and I was an obvious target for his anger. I decided it was time to be proactive. Jake was living in a run-down apartment complex in Evanston, a far cry from the luxury high-rise he'd been bragging about on social media just a few months earlier. His BMW had been repossessed, another consequence of his financial irresponsibility, and he was driving a beat-up Honda Civic that had seen better days. I parked across the street and waited. Sure enough, Jake emerged around 6 p.m., looking haggard and desperate. He'd lost weight. His expensive clothes had been replaced with discount store alternatives, and his perfectly styled hair was now an unkempt mess. He walked to a nearby bar, and I followed at a distance. The bar was exactly the kind of dive where someone like Jake would go to feel sorry for himself. Dark, cheap, and full of other people whose lives hadn't turned out as planned. I took a seat in a corner booth and watched as Jake ordered whiskey and started complaining to anyone who would listen. "Guy destroyed my career over nothing," he was telling the bartender. "Just because I was dating his wife, like that's a crime or something." Dating his wife? The bartender raised an eyebrow. Sounds like adultery to me. She was going to leave him anyway. I just gave her a reason to do it sooner. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Now I can't get a job anywhere in the city. He made sure everyone thinks I'm some kind of criminal. Aren't you? Asked another patron. Didn't you steal money from your company? That wasn't stealing. Those were legitimate business expenses. For hotel rooms with another man's wife? Jake's face turned red. You don't understand the situation. Alex Holden is a vindictive bastard who can't accept that his wife preferred a real man. I'd heard enough. I stood up and walked over to the bar. Funny thing about real men, Jake. They don't usually have to steal money to impress women. Jake spun around, his eyes wide with shock and anger. What the hell are you doing here? Having a drink. This is a public place, isn't it? You're stalking me. Actually, I think you've got that backwards. My friend in building security mentioned you've been hanging around my office. Care to explain that? Jake stood up unsteadily, the whiskey making him braver than he should have been. You ruined my life. No, Jake. You ruined your own life when you decided to commit fraud and sleep with another man's wife. I just made sure there were consequences. I should kick your ass right here. I laughed. You should, but you won't. Because deep down, you know you're a coward who only picks fights he thinks he can win. And right now, you're not winning anything. Jake swung at me, a clumsy, drunken punch that I easily dodged. He stumbled forward, off balance, and I grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back, a move I'd learned in a self-defense class years earlier. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly, loud enough for everyone in the bar to hear. You're going to stay away from me, my office, and my home. If I see you anywhere near my life again, I'll have you arrested for stalking. And if you ever threaten me again, I'll make sure that recording of you admitting to expense account fraud finds its way to the district attorney's office. I released his arm and stepped back. Jake stumbled and nearly fell, his face flushed with humiliation. This isn't over, he mumbled. Yes, it is. You just don't have the sense to realize it yet. I left the bar and drove home, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Jake wasn't done causing trouble. Men like him didn't accept defeat gracefully. I was right. 3 days later, I came home to find my front door standing open. My first thought was burglary, but nothing seemed to be missing. Instead, I found something much worse. My home office had been ransacked, papers scattered everywhere, and my computer was gone. But Jake had made a crucial mistake. He'd overlooked the security cameras I'd had installed after the separation. The footage was crystal clear. Jake breaking in through the back door, searching frantically through my files, and leaving with my laptop and several folders of documents. He'd probably been looking for something he could use against me in court, or maybe just trying to destroy evidence of his own wrongdoing. Either way, he'd just committed a felony. I called the police, and within 2 hours, Jake was in custody. The laptop was recovered from his apartment, along with several of my personal documents. His public defender tried to argue that it was a misunderstanding, but the security footage was undeniable. Jake was charged with breaking and entering, theft, and violation of the restraining order I'd filed after the bar incident. Bail was set at $50,000, money he didn't have. While Jake sat in county jail waiting for his court date, I decided to pay Marta a visit. Her studio apartment was in a converted warehouse in a neighborhood that was trying hard to be trendy but mostly just looked desperate. The building had no doorman, no security, and no pretensions of luxury. I knocked on her door, and after a long pause, she opened it just enough to see who was there. What do you want, Alex? I wanted to see how you're adjusting to your new circumstances. She looked terrible. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by discount store alternatives. Her hair, once perfectly styled, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. The manicured nails were chipped, and she wasn't wearing makeup. If you came here to gloat, you can leave now. Actually, I came to make you an offer. She opened the door wider, curiosity overcoming caution. What kind of offer? Jake's in jail. He broke into our house and stole my computer. He's looking at serious prison time. That's not my problem. Isn't it? You were planning to testify on his behalf in the divorce proceedings. Hard to do that when he's a convicted felon. Marta's face went pale. What do you want? I want you to sign an amended separation agreement. You give up any claim to alimony, you acknowledge that the marriage failed due to your adultery and deception, and you agree never to contact me again. In exchange for what? I don't pursue criminal charges against you for your role in Jake's expense account fraud, and I don't release the recordings I have of you planning to defraud me in the divorce. She stared at me for a long moment. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a way out of a situation that's only going to get worse. Jake's going to prison, Marta. When he does, he's going to blame everyone but himself for his problems. How long do you think it'll be before he starts talking to prosecutors about your involvement in his schemes? I wasn't involved in anything illegal. Maybe not. But do you really want to spend the next year of your life proving that in court? Do you want your name in the newspapers when Jake's case goes to trial? She was quiet for a long time, weighing her options. If I sign your agreement, this all goes away? You go away. You sign the papers, you disappear from my life, and you start over somewhere else. Clean slate? And Jake? Jake made his own choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences. Marta signed the papers the next day. 6 months after Jake's arrest, I thought the drama was finally over. The divorce was finalized, the house was mine, and both Marta and Jake had disappeared from my daily life. I was starting to date again, my work was going well, and I felt like I'd successfully rebuilt my life. Then Sarah Mitchell called with disturbing news. Alex, we have a problem. Marta's hired a new lawyer, and they're trying to overturn the separation agreement. On what grounds? They're claiming you coerced her into signing under duress. They're also alleging that you fabricated evidence and engaged in a campaign of harassment and intimidation. I felt my stomach drop. Can they do that? They can try. The good news is that we have documentation of everything, including recordings of her admitting to the affair and planning to defraud you. The bad news is that this could drag on for months and cost you a fortune in legal fees. What's their end game? Money, most likely. They're probably hoping you'll settle rather than fight it in court. But I knew Marta better than that. This wasn't about money, it was about revenge. She'd spent 6 months stewing in her studio apartment, blaming me for her downfall, and now she wanted to make me pay. The court hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning in downtown Chicago. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, with Sarah at my side and a briefcase full of evidence. Marta was already there with her new lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman who specialized in overturning divorce settlements. Marta had cleaned herself up for the occasion. New clothes, professional styling, and the kind of confident demeanor that had once made her successful in advertising. But I wasn't the same man she'd married 20 years earlier. The naive, trusting husband was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned to fight back. The hearing began with Marta's lawyer painting a picture of an abusive husband who'd used his financial resources and professional connections to destroy an innocent woman's life. Your Honor, my client was the victim of a systematic campaign of harassment and intimidation. Mr. Holden used his position at their shared workplace to fabricate evidence, destroy her career, and coerce her into signing an unconscionable agreement. It was a compelling narrative, and I could see the judge listening carefully. Then it was Sarah's turn. Your Honor, Mrs. Holden was caught in a documented affair that included fraud, deception, and plans to systematically defraud her husband in their divorce. Every action Mr. Holden took was legal, justified, and supported by evidence. Sarah methodically presented our case. The hotel receipts, the group chat screenshots, the recordings of Marta planning to trade up from her husband, and Jake's confession to expense account fraud. But the most damaging evidence was something I'd been saving for exactly this moment. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit M, a recording made by Mrs. Holden herself, 3 weeks before Mr. Holden discovered the affair. The recording was from Marta's phone, recovered from her cloud backup during the discovery process. In it, she was talking to her friend Tanya about her plans for the divorce. The key is to make him think everything is fine until the papers are served, Marta's voice said clearly. My lawyer says if I can prove he's emotionally abusive or controlling, I can get more than half. And if Jake gets promoted to creative director, we'll have enough money to start over in New York. The judge's expression didn't change, but I could see the shift in the room's atmosphere. I see, the judge said quietly. Mrs. Holden, did you make this recording? Marta's lawyer whispered something to her, but Marta was staring at me with pure hatred. Yes, Your Honor, but it was taken out of context. What context would make planning to defraud your husband acceptable? I was just venting to a friend. I never intended to actually... Mrs. Holden, you're under oath. The rest of the hearing was a formality. The judge denied Marta's motion to overturn the separation agreement and awarded me attorney's fees for having to defend against what he called a frivolous and vindictive lawsuit. Outside the courthouse, Marta confronted me one last time. You think you've won, don't you? I think I've survived. There's a difference. This isn't over, Alex. I'll find a way to make you pay for what you've done to me. Marta, look around. You're a 43-year-old woman with no career, no money, no friends, and no prospects. Your boyfriend is in prison, your family has disowned you, and you just lost the last legal avenue to get back at me. It's over. You just don't want to admit it. She slapped me, hard enough to turn heads on the busy sidewalk. I didn't react. I just looked at her with pity. Goodbye, Marta. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I walked away, leaving her standing alone on the courthouse steps. But I should have known she wasn't done fighting. 3 weeks after the court hearing, I was settling into my new routine. The house felt different without Marta's presence. Quieter, more peaceful, but also somehow larger and emptier. I'd started dating a woman named Rebecca, a teacher who appreciated my sarcasm and didn't seem interested in my bank account balance. Life was good, which should have been my first warning that something was about to go wrong. The call came on a Tuesday night while I was grilling dinner on my back deck. Alex, it's Sarah. We have a problem. Jake made bail. I nearly dropped my phone. How is that possible? I thought he couldn't afford it. Someone posted it for him. $50,000 in cash. The bondsman won't say who, but I think we both know. Marta. She'd found the money somewhere and bailed out her ex-lover. The question was why. I got my answer 2 days later. I was working late at the office when building security called. Mr. Holden, we have a situation in the parking garage. Someone's been messing with your car. I took the elevator down to the garage and found my BMW with all 4 tires slashed and bastard keyed into the paint on both sides. Security footage showed 2 figures in hoodies, but their faces weren't visible. I knew it was Jake and Marta, but I couldn't prove it. The harassment escalated over the next week. My home security system recorded someone trying to break in through the back door. My office received anonymous calls claiming I was embezzling money. Someone signed me up for dozens of spam email lists and magazine subscriptions. It was juvenile, desperate, and ultimately pointless, but it was also illegal. I called Detective Morrison, the officer who'd handled Jake's burglary case. Mr. Holden, I remember your case. What can I do for you? I explained the harassment campaign, providing security footage, phone records, and documentation of each incident. It sounds like your ex-wife and her boyfriend are trying to make your life miserable, Morrison said. The problem is proving it. Most of this is circumstantial. What if I could get them to confess? That would certainly help. What did you have in mind? I'd been thinking about that question for days, and I had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. I want to set a trap. The plan was simple in concept, but complex in execution. I would make it appear that I was going out of town for the weekend, leaving the house empty and vulnerable. Jake and Marta would almost certainly try to break in, looking for evidence they could use against me or simply trying to cause more damage. But I wouldn't actually leave. Instead, I'd be waiting for them with cameras recording everything and Detective Morrison on speed dial. Friday evening, I made a show of packing my car and telling my neighbors I was going to visit my brother in Milwaukee. I drove to a hotel near the airport, checked in under my own name to establish an alibi, then snuck back to my house after dark. I parked 3 blocks away and approached through the woods behind my property, entering through the basement door that wasn't visible from the street. Then I settled into my home office with night vision cameras, motion sensors, and a thermos of coffee. I didn't have to wait long. At 2:17 a.m., my security system detected movement in the backyard. Through the cameras, I could see 2 figures approaching the house, Jake and Marta, both dressed in dark clothes and carrying what looked like crowbars. I started recording and called Detective Morrison. They're here, I whispered. 2 subjects attempting to break in through the back door. Units are en route. Stay hidden and keep recording. Jake and Marta spent several minutes trying to disable the security system, not realizing that I'd upgraded it after the first break-in attempt. When they couldn't get it to shut off, they decided to smash their way in through the sliding glass door leading to the deck. The sound of breaking glass was incredibly loud in the quiet house. I could hear them arguing as they climbed through the opening. This is stupid, Jake. What if he comes back early? He's in Milwaukee. I checked his hotel reservation myself. How did you check his hotel reservation? I have my ways. They were in the living room now, and I could see them clearly through my hidden cameras. Marta looked nervous and out of place, but Jake seemed energized by the break-in. What are we looking for? Marta asked. Anything we can use. Financial records, personal documents, embarrassing photos, something that proves he's not the saint everyone thinks he is. They spent 20 minutes ransacking my living room and kitchen, looking for a safe or hidden documents. Then they headed upstairs toward the bedrooms. That's when I made my move. I slipped out of the office and positioned myself at the bottom of the staircase, blocking their exit route. Then I turned on all the lights in the house. Looking for something specific? I called up to them. The sound of scrambling and panicked whispers came from upstairs. Alex? Marta's voice was shaky. We thought you were out of town. Funny thing about that. I lied. Come on down here so we can discuss this like civilized people. Jake appeared at the top of the stairs, crowbar in hand. Stay back, Alex. We're not here to hurt you. Just to rob me. I understand the distinction. We're not robbing you. We're looking for evidence of what you did to us. What I did to you. Jake, you committed fraud and adultery. Marta, you planned to defraud me in our divorce. I simply made sure there were consequences for your actions. You destroyed our lives. Marta appeared beside Jake, her face flushed with anger. You destroyed your own lives. I just refused to be collateral damage. That's when I heard the sirens approaching. Gentlemen, I believe your ride is here, I said, borrowing a line from an old movie. Jake's face went white. You called the cops? I called them before you even broke the window. Everything you've done tonight is on camera, and Detective Morrison has been listening to our entire conversation. The front door burst open, and 3 police officers entered with guns drawn. Chicago PD, everyone on the ground. Jake dropped the crowbar and put his hands up. Marta started crying. As the officers handcuffed them both, Detective Morrison approached me with a grim smile. Nice work, Mr. Holden. We've got them on breaking and entering. Burglary, violation of bail conditions, and conspiracy. Plus, the recording of them admitting to the harassment campaign should be enough for additional charges. Jake was shouting as they led him to the patrol car. This is entrapment. He set us up. You set yourselves up, I replied. I just gave you the opportunity to show everyone who you really are. Marta looked at me one last time before they put her in the car. I hope you're happy now, she said. I'm satisfied, I replied. There's a difference. As the police cars drove away, I stood in my driveway looking at my house. Broken glass, ransacked rooms, and all. It would take time and money to repair the damage, but it was worth it to finally be free of Jake and Marta's attempts at revenge. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Saw the news about the break-in. Are you okay? I smiled and typed back, Never better. Want to help me clean up this mess? On my way. As I waited for her to arrive, I poured myself a scotch and sat on my front porch, watching the sun come up over the quiet suburb where I'd lived for 20 years. Jake would go back to prison, probably for several years this time. Marta would likely get probation and community service, but her reputation was permanently destroyed. They'd both learned the hard way that actions have consequences, and that underestimating your opponent is a dangerous mistake. I'd started this whole mess as the victim, the betrayed husband, the naive Mark, the man who'd been taken for granted and planned to be discarded, but I'd ended it as something else entirely, as someone who refused to be destroyed by other people's selfishness and cruelty. The old Alex would have quietly accepted the divorce, paid the alimony, and spent years wondering what he'd done wrong. But that man was gone, replaced by someone who understood that sometimes the only way to stop being a victim is to make sure the people who hurt you face real consequences for their actions. As Rebecca's car pulled into my driveway, I raised my glass in a private toast. Here's to new beginnings, I said to myself, and the end of old mistakes.